today, we're taxing the rich. I'm thrilled to announce we've secured a pied-à-terre tax, the first in New York's history.
And look, 3 weeks ago, a state governor quietly signed a new tax into law that functions exactly like an exit tax on homeowners trying to leave. Except they didn't call it an exit tax. They never do. Calling it an exit tax sounds like a toll booth run by the mafia. Instead, they do it quietly, using terms that sound like they were focus grouped by a sleepy accountant. An unrealized gains tax becomes a wealth assessment. An equity tax becomes a mansion tax. And an exit tax, oh, that's just withholding at closing, or a fair share amendment, or a continuing residency obligation. Different label, same bill. Because what they've built and what they're building in 5 states right now is a toll booth on the way out, and it might as well be run by the mafia. One just got signed into law 22 days ago. Another's on the November ballot with a retroactive trigger that's already behind us. A third is cutting a homeowner exemption by 89%. A fourth's been quietly running this play for 22 years. And the fifth generated $5.7 billion in 3 years. The blueprint every other state is copying right now. I'm gonna walk you through all 5. I'll show you the 6 that are now drafting their version, and I'll show you what the smart money is already doing about it before these become permanent, before they're official. State number 1, New Jersey. Now they don't call it an exit tax. They call it GIT-REP-3 withholding, which sounds less like a tax form and more like a rejected droid from the Star Wars prequels. Here's how the New Jersey toll booth works. If you used to live in New Jersey and you sell your New Jersey home after you moved out of state, the title company at closing is required to withhold 10.75% of your estimated gain, or 2% of the gross sale price, whichever is bigger. So if you sell your New Jersey house for $800,000, whether that's a small gain or a big gain or even a loss, doesn't matter. The 2% floor kicks in. At the closing table, New Jersey walks away with $16,000 of your money, held in escrow, 12 to 18 months, interest-free to the state, courtesy of you. Now you get most of it back when you file the non-resident return, eventually. But let's talk about what $16,000 means when you're trying to start over in Florida. That's 4 months of rent. That's the down payment, first month, and deposit on a new place. That's the moving truck, plus closing costs, plus furniture for the rooms you couldn't pack, plus a cushion for everything you forgot, utility deposits, cable insurance, the HOA welcome fee nobody told you about. The New Jersey statute, 54A 8-9, has been on the books since 2004. 22 years, upheld in court, constitutional. Nobody sued it into oblivion. Nobody repealed it. And now, with blue states losing residents by the tens of thousands and their tax bases draining into Florida and Tennessee, every other state legislator in America is looking at New Jersey and thinking the same thing. They've been quietly pulling 2% off every non-resident home sale for 22 years. Why aren't we doing that? Because here's the best part. If you're a state legislator, it's copy and pasteable. Any state that wants to replicate this needs one sentence in statute. No deed shall be recorded without proof of state withholding. That's it. That's the whole play. 4 more states have already started writing their version. Let me show you the most profitable one. State number 2, Massachusetts. They don't call it an exit tax. Nope, they call it the Fair Share Amendment. A name so wholesome it sounds like a PBS fundraising pledge drive. November 2022, Massachusetts voters passed a constitutional amendment. 4% surtax on any income over $1 million in a single year. Sold as the Billionaire Tax. Only affects the rich, right? No. Here's what nobody tells you. The Massachusetts Department of Revenue has officially confirmed this surtax applies to one-time income events, which includes, and I want you to sit with this for a second, the sale of your home. Let me show you this math. Married couple in Cambridge bought their house in 1995 for $280,000. Today, because it's Cambridge, it's worth $1.8 million. They sell to retire to Florida. Their gain, $1,520,000. Federal exclusion for married filers, that's $500,000, so their taxable federal gain is over $1 million. That one-time home sale pushes them over the $1,083,150 Massachusetts threshold for the surtax. On top of every other tax they owe, an extra $40,000 to $60,000 on their house sale. And that doesn't count the realtor's commission. It doesn't count the transfer tax. It doesn't count the general sales tax. $40,000 to $60,000 on top of that. Since 2022, Massachusetts has pulled in $5.7 billion from this tax. They projected half that. The money more than doubled expectations. That's the Massachusetts toll booth. It doesn't charge you at the gate, it charges you at the tax return. Same result, bigger bill. NYC Mayor Mamdani has openly cited Massachusetts as the template for his proposed 2% surtax on New York millionaires. The Washington millionaires tax, same blueprint. You see, when the money works, the model, it spreads.
Yeah, but Matt, I'm not a millionaire. And what's wrong with the rich paying more?
I've done 3 videos on this in the last 45 days, so I'm not gonna get into it other than to say, that's what they want you to think. If you approve of taxing the rich, it lets them in the back door to tax you later. That's how the income tax started. You know that, right? It was only meant for the 1%. And fast forward to today, everybody pays. Same toll booth, different sign out front. And it's crazy because you did everything right. You bought the house, you paid it off, you mowed the lawn, you fixed the gutters when they broke. And now, when you finally want to do the thing they told you to do, sell and retire somewhere cheaper, they've set up a toll booth between you and the off-ramp. I mean, it's the Dave Ramsey playbook. Sell your house, bank the tax-free gain, move to Florida. That was the retirement plan for 30 years. It's broken. In 2025, 2.1 million Americans over 65 moved. California lost a net of almost 13,000 retirees. New York lost nearly 9,000. They went to South Carolina, Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, Florida. Same list every year. The average departing retiree takes $600,000 to $1.5 million in home equity out the door with them, plus the 401k, plus the savings account. That money leaves the state tax base forever. So legislators in Sacramento, Albany, and Olympia have 2 choices. Shrink the government to match the shrinking tax base. They never do that. Or we tax the people on the way out. Government doesn't shrink, so they tax. 5 states built the toll booths. 6 more are pouring concrete. State number 3, Washington. They don't call it an exit tax there either. They call it the millionaire's tax until you read the residency rules. March 30th, 2026. That was like what, 4 weeks ago? Governor Bob Ferguson picks up a pen, signs Senate Bill 6346, and with that signature, Washington State, a state famous for having no income tax, just got its first state income tax since 1932, 94 years ago. For nearly a century, the last time Washington tried to pass an income tax, the Washington Supreme Court struck it down. This is one of the main reasons tech executives and retirees migrated to Seattle in the first place. That seal just got broken. 1 governor, 1 signature, 32 days ago. Starting January 1st, 2028, there's a 9.9% state income tax on any household income over $1 million. That's the sticker. But here's the kicker. This tax applies to former Washington residents too. Retired from Microsoft 5 years ago, moved to Idaho, still collecting a pension that vested while you lived in Washington, they want 9.9% of it on any amount over $1 million. Bob Ferguson apparently looked at the word non-resident and decided it sounded like a suggestion. The toll booth follows you. And here's the part nobody's connecting yet. Washington is the 3rd state to formally pass a mechanism like this in the last 42 months. Massachusetts, November 2022, Connecticut 2022, Washington, March 2026. And the pattern isn't slowing down, it's accelerating. The dominoes aren't falling one at a time anymore, they're falling in clusters. And here's what I think is actually happening. And I can't prove this part, so take it for what it's worth. I think the Washington Supreme Court challenge was already drafted before the ink dried on Ferguson's signature. I think they know it'll get struck down, probably in 2027. And I think they don't care, because the mechanism is on the books, and the next budget crisis that hits Olympia, and it will, They'll pass a tweaked version with the same mechanism until one of them sticks. That's the playbook. You're watching it in real time. State number 4, California. They don't call it an exit tax, no. They call it a continuing residency taxation. November of 2026, this year, 7 months from now or so, California voters will likely see the Billionaire Tax Act on their ballot. Proponents need a certain number of signatures by June 24th this year. And that's why I'm making this video right now, before the signature drive closes and this thing hits the ballot for real. You see, on paper, this one only hits billionaires. One-time 5% tax on net worth over $1 billion. It targets 213 Californians. Projected $100 billion in revenue. And you hear that and you think,
Matt, good. They need to pay their fair share, finally.
I told you that's exactly what they want you to think. Here's why. Buried in the measure is language that doesn't just create a one-time tax on billionaires. No, it rewrites California's constitution. Until right now, California had a rule on the books, a 0.4% cap on taxing things like stocks, bonds, and business interests. That cap is the only reason a broad wealth tax on ordinary Californians has been legally impossible for decades. This ballot measure carves a permanent exception into that cap and then writes explicit language giving the state legislature authority to amend the act in ways that further its purposes. Further its purposes. Those are scary words from your government. I mean, that's the legal crowbar. That's the phrase the lawyers fought over before the ink dried. Because once the door is cracked open, once the constitutional infrastructure exists, the legislature doesn't need to come back to you and ask for permission. They just need to argue that lowering the threshold from 1 billion to 100 million furthers the purpose. That dropping it to 10 million furthers the purpose. That a 2% annual wealth tax on anyone over $1 million furthers the purpose. Anyone making $100,000 a year, you get the point. A think tank called the Tax Foundation, they called this, and I'm quoting directly, a permanent, unassailable state constitutional infrastructure upon which this and potentially future wealth taxes can be legally anchored. Translation, the 5% on billionaires isn't the tax. It's the foundation the real tax gets built on. Nurses, teachers, firefighters, the retired couple in Fresno sitting on a paid-off house and a rollover IRA. That's who the fair share tax eventually hits, not the 213 names on the Forbes list. Those 213 can afford tax attorneys and Wyoming trusts and a 6-month move to Nevada. Most can't. They ran the exact playbook in 1913 with income tax. They're doing it in 2026. What's old is new again. But here's where California goes from regular wealth tax to full-blown exit tax. And this is the part that makes this measure unlike anything any other state has tried. The measurement date, the date that determines if you owe, is January 1st, 2026. A date that is 3.5 months or so in the past. Which means if you are a California resident on New Year's Day, even if you move to Nevada on January 2nd, even if you've already sold your house, even if you've been in a U-Haul driving east for 3 months, they're claiming the right to tax you. You cannot outrun a retroactive trigger date. It's the fiscal equivalent of getting a parking ticket for a spot you parked in last Tuesday, before the meter was even installed. And this isn't California's first time running this play. In 2020, Assembly Bill 2088 would have imposed a wealth tax on California residents, plus a sliding scale continuation of that tax for 10 years after they moved out of state. 10 years. I mean, imagine selling your house in San Diego, moving to Texas, and watching Sacramento send you a tax bill every April through 2036. The Socialist Republic of California wants your money, and they're throwing massive amounts of spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. Fortunately, AB 2088 didn't stick. But the Billionaire Tax Act borrows the same DNA. And the union coalition funding the measure, SEIU United Healthcare Workers West, said it out loud. Here's the quote. Their spokesman said the measurement date was designed specifically so that billionaires can't avoid responsibility by moving their assets or claiming a residency elsewhere. Translation? We designed this thing to be inescapable. And I ask, who made you the hall monitors for responsibility? But that's the California toll booth. It charges you on the way out, and if the 10-year taint provision ever gets revived, which based on how many times they've tried, it's a matter of when, not if, it charges you for 10 years after you've left. State number 5, New York. Now they don't call it an exit tax, no, they call it an estate tax modernization. Now that phrase right there, estate tax modernization, sounds like a neighborhood zoning committee trying to add sidewalks. It sounds harmless, bureaucratic, like something you'd skim past in a newspaper. Read the actual proposal and you'll want to throw the newspaper. Zohran Mamdani, the new mayor of New York City, whose name sounds like a benevolent sorcerer, but whose tax policy reads like a ransom note, put forward his fiscal year 2027 budget in February. Buried in the middle of it is a line item that should stop every New York homeowner watching this cold. He wants to cut the New York State estate tax exemption from $7.35 million to $750,000, an 89.8% reduction. And he wants to triple the top estate tax rate from 16% to 50%. Listen to that again. 90% reduction in the exemption, triple the rate at the top. And so now we're no longer talking about the Rockefellers. This isn't about the Hamptons. This is about ordinary middle-class homeowners. He wasted no time. This is no longer a billionaire's problem. That's a firefighter's widow's problem. That's a teacher's family getting a bill from Albany for the crime of holding a piece of real estate for 37 years. That's the toll booth they're building for your kids. New Jersey, Massachusetts, Washington, California, New York. They'd rather take more of your money than fight fraud and waste. And it's not stopping with those 5 states either. Michigan is getting named in national coverage alongside California, New York, and Washington. Connecticut passed a similar surtax in 2022 and is considering expansion. Minnesota added a 1% tax on net investment income over $1 million in 2024. Maryland is actively drafting. Oregon is considering. Illinois floats versions every legislative session. Different states, different bills, different labels, same toll booth. 11 states total, 5 built, 6 under construction. Now, I would typically give you an action plan here. 3 moves, pull your file, make the call, do the thing. Not this time. Because the honest truth about this one is, if your state wants your equity on the way out, they've built the legal infrastructure to take it. The toll booths I just walked you through aren't loopholes you can paperwork your way out of. They're architecture. They're designed to be inescapable. Here's what I can say. If you lean left, if you hate Trump, I get it. He's not for everybody. He's an acquired taste. And if you're watching this thinking, finally, the rich are going to pay their fair share, I get that too. On paper, it looks like a free lunch at the billionaire's table. It looks like justice. But here's the thing about tax policy in America. It has a very specific, very consistent pattern. And you don't have to take my word for it. History is talking over me anyway. 1913, the 16th Amendment, income tax, meant for the rich, now impacts everybody. 1937 Social Security tax, a 2% tax on the first $3,000 of your income. Today it's 12.4% on the first $184,500 of your income. 6 times the rate, over 50 times the wage base. 1969, the alternative minimum tax, meant for just 155 wealthy families. Now it impacts 5.2 million middle-class households. 3 different taxes, 3 different generations, 3 different administrations, Democrat and Republican. 3 different rationales, same pattern. Start at the top and then sell it as fairness. Expand it downward every single time. Now, if you lean right, I hear you too. You're probably watching this ready to blame Newsom or Mamdani or the Squad and the progressive wing. And I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong about them. But they are all politicians, red and blue, left and right. And when it comes to politicians and them taking action, if it gets votes, they do it. If it generates revenue, they do it. If it consolidates power, they do it. That's the job description. That's the incentive structure. The only reason red states haven't built these toll booths themselves yet is because their tax bases are growing. Florida, Tennessee, Texas, they're absorbing the migration, not hemorrhaging it. They don't need to build a toll booth on the way out because people are dying to get in. Give them a decade of reversed migration and we'll see how that goes, or a budget crisis, or a new generation of legislators, and we'll see who they really are. But we've got who we've got today, and telling you to vote feels like the cheap answer, the cheesy Instagram infographic answer. Make your voice heard, I know. But when you're dealing with state legislatures writing constitutional amendments that carve permanent exemptions into their own tax codes, voting is the only tool we got. So vote, but know what you're voting for, not just who you're voting against. Because here's what history tells us. The party promising you a free lunch on the back of someone else has always come back for your lunch too. Not because they're evil, not because they're left or right, because they're politicians. And politicians do what politicians do. It's not insurmountable, but this particular fight is stacked. But here's the thing. The exit tax is just one crack in a much bigger wall. And while we can't do much about what your state legislature does next Tuesday, there are 6 other system-wide failures happening right now, all compounding on each other, all landing on your front doorstep, where the moves you make in the next 30 days or so actually matter. And that's why I pulled this video here out for you to watch next. American homeowners are on high alert, and they should be. We don't ignore, we don't hide, we defend. Click this video here, take a look, and I'll meet you over there. God loves you, and so do I. Take care.